Now, as you can see, I'm not in my studios because I'm down in Bristol for Christmas. I'm here for about a week, so we'll return to normal in the new year. But anyway, let's get on with it. So, we have a real moment of opportunity with Luigi Mangione. I don't see the left in a particularly strong position at all, and I can only see the right grow from strength to strength. Now, the left did largely win the debate on social issues over the last couple of decades broadly. Racists and bigots were embarrassed. We as a society made people kind of, want to hide their views. It was a deal breaker if you were a social conservative, and conservative parties were forced to adopt social progressive opinions, maybe apart from the GOP. At this time, we, the left, were then trying to win the debate on the economy. Thatcher and Reaganism was and is so pervasive that anytime we talked about left economic policy, it was seen as crazy, unaffordable, pie in the sky, and that's still the case for the establishment. But crises and disruptions, namely the 2008 crash, felt as if we had the opportunity to leave the neoliberal era. Fast forward to today, and has that happened? Absolutely not. Instead, the tide is turning on social progressivism. In fact, not just social conservative views, but we're seeing more openly white supremacists and fascists. And the fascist ideology is becoming an industry for grifters. People are openly saying the craziest stuff, and it's having almost no effect. The left has been completely blunted, and the right have even now co-opted an anti-establishment message, which has usually been the core of leftist campaigns. But for the right, the establishment are talking about cultural elites. Now, the right's entire political philosophy has been culture wars. They obsess over identity politics. But the left broadly has been unable to pivot hard on class issues. And that's mostly not our fault. Liberal parties, along with the media, simply don't care and have been successful in blunting our instruments. It's hard not to feel that all hope is lost. That was until Luigi Mangione. Now, Luigi isn't a working class hero. He's come from a very wealthy and potentially maybe even well-connected family. But that doesn't matter. What matters, as we all know, is that he has exposed class consciousness to the masses. Across party lines, people sympathize or even downright think he's a hero. Audiences of Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh have been calling the left sick for supporting this guy. But they were met with a wave of attacks, calling them out for being out of touch. And more importantly, they've said that this isn't a left-right issue. And it's true. It's not a left-right issue. It's a 1% versus the 99%. Now, you might be thinking, well, if you don't think this is a left-right issue, then why are you making a video about how this is good for the left? Well, I'll explain. Simply, the left are the ones who have the economic policies and ideas that support the 99%. And of course, I argue that when the left wins, we all win. The right, they themselves want to win, and they want to destroy leftists or those that disagree with them. And I feel like they are entirely divisive, whereas the left broadly is about uniting people. The opportunity we have is to expose these new forces on the right, and yes, far right, as out-of-touch people who hate the working class. Now, if you have the displeasure of using Twitter, you'll see a huge spike in right-wing and MAGA activity. With accounts such as Libs of TikTok and Wokeness, these are fascist, neo-Nazi accounts, but they're showing the world now that they do not have the interests of the working class in mind. Specifically with this account and Wokeness has a huge following. They posted it in support of this old man, a lawyer actually, murdering climate protesters. Now, all they did was block roads, and this guy straight up murdered them. I don't think you should be killed for sitting in a road. You see, this account showed sympathy, simply because the victims were political opponents. Yet here, by contrast, we have the same accounts attacking Luigi and anyone who sympathizes with them. Oh, what about the man's family? Blah, 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 blah. Suddenly, killing is wrong. But this isn't about exposing the contradiction, that much is obvious, but rather exposing people from a political faction who purport to support the working class, and well, everyone, openly showing you that they despise you. They want to attack marginalized communities and the left or woke people, but they don't want to support or even sympathize with those who are victims of the American healthcare system, which is most people. They don't support material gains for the working class. They don't support unions or higher wages. They don't support universal healthcare. But the left does. Because the left, as always, are the only ones to fight the only war that unites people. The class war. Trump, who has managed to convince millions of people, including the working class, that he has their back. He's attacked Luigi and those who support him. Trump is doing what he's always been about. A billionaire standing with his own class over the rest of us. And that is why we have a huge opportunity to show people just like left-wing movements did back in the day when we had big union and workers' movements that won gains for the working class. That Trump and right-wing parties and their movements hates you. They hate us. They hate our class. In a British context, the same is with Reform. Now, Reform is surging. They're probably going to get more than 50 seats at the next election. They're convincing more and more people, including the working class, that they are the answer. They are not the answer. Reform, who is potentially going to receive hundreds of millions of dollars from the richest man in the world, who has just bought the US election, is supporting Reform because the man in question, Elon Musk, knows that's the best vehicle to support his class of people. Farage, Tyson, others, whilst very rich themselves, aren't billionaires, but they are servants to capital. The left and socialists like myself have always been consistent. We don't want money in politics. We hate billionaires and corporations. We hate the Labour Party for taking donations from billionaires. We hate it when the Tories do it, and the same with Reform. And Reform are making excuses. They're saying, well, Liberal parties are taking big money donors. What about George Soros, eh? Well, for Liberals, they might like him. But for the left, we say, fuck you to him too. The left needs to take this opportunity seriously. Now, Turn Left, as a media organisation and brand, we proudly stand up for minorities. We proudly stand up for trans and queer people, and we won't ever abandon you. But some global progressive movements and organisations think we have to capitulate on social issues in order to win people over, and I don't agree. Now, granted, they are right about one thing. It's certainly harder to convince people and argue for social progressivism in this day and age as opposed to class issues. In fact, I had a conversation with someone last week, a young white guy. He said that he liked Trump and Elon Musk, and he said, look, I was a leftist, but I think the left has gone too extreme. And I've heard this over and over again. Maybe you've heard it too. And I first asked him, what has made the left so extreme? Of course, he said, and again, I predicted what he was going to say, well, I don't really get the trans stuff. I think it's gone too far. If you don't have the 100% correct opinion, you're seen as a bigot. Now, of course, I pushed back and I said, do you think that's the left or do you think that's the right-wing characterization of the left? And he was like, well, I don't really know. But I didn't want to get into a conversation simply about social progressivism because I think that's what happens in the media a lot. I wanted to reach him. So I said to him, I noticed how you only characterize the left as a movement of social issues. You didn't mention anything about economic policy. But on leftist economic policy, I bet you agree. Higher minimum wage, investment, public ownership, free tuition. He went, absolutely, I agree. He said, I usually support Labour. I mean, they seem to be the party that has more in tune with the working class. I know they don't, but that's what he thought. And so him liking Trump and Musk, he wasn't like, oh, I like Reform or anything like that. And the left needs to understand that just because someone says they kind of like Trump or Elon Musk or whatever, doesn't make them right wing. And he is someone that could be reached. He is someone who I could see, if the left don't reach him, he will eventually end up with Reform. Now, some would draw from this conversation that surely the silver bullet is abandoning social progressivism and leaning hard on left economics. And I think that's wrong for two reasons. One, morally, yes. I mean, look, to be a socialist is to support freedom. That's what socialism is about, economic and social freedoms. Maximum personal liberty for all. So we should support social progressivism. It doesn't matter who you want to be or how you identify, we should support you. Two, it's not a good strategy because you alienate your base. Now, we've had multiple conversations about how the Labour Party has alienated their own base by ditching socialism or social democracy and becoming a neoliberal capitalist party to try and reach other voters. But that's not really worked, has it? Because they now have a loveless landslide. Yes, huge landslide, but their poll ratings is abysmal. So on economic issues, they've alienated their base. It's the same with social issues. Of course, slightly different demographics, but you want to build broad coalitions. You don't want to move left on economics and then say F you to all those who care about social issues too. And all those people from minority communities will abandon you, and rightly so. Instead, what we do is real intersectional politics that supports all issues, but frames it all around class. Because whether you're trans, black, a woman, you are working class. What we need to do is flip identity politics on its head. We need to push it back on them. If the right brings up culture wars, and they will because that's all they have, we'll just say, shut up, nerd. Why are you so obsessed with identity politics? And then proceed to talk about our rigged economy in favor of corporations and the billionaire class. We need to push and push the message that the right are bitches for capital. The mask is slipping on these right-wing frauds, and we need to expose them as anti-working class. So conversations you have with people, or when you're campaigning, yes, continue to expose the right as racist, sexist, and on the far right, expose their fascism. But we also have to go hard on the message that above all, these people support the capital class over workers. That MAGA and Trump have turned the US into a full-on oligarchy, and Reform wants to take back control and then hand it over to the billionaire class.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.